Hello, I'm Yunahu, and this is a nostalgic look back on the item tree. An OC from MYM 8. This is probably by far the least popular of my original characters. Not least because it was actually created basically out of an argument that started when I posted one of my more controversial articles on the stadium. Basically, was an argument about the kind of the virtues of what Brawl itself, the Brawl that was supposedly improving on by making these move sets, and I'm of the opinion that there's a lot more to Brawl than anyone's really given it credit for, and a lot of our ideas that we keep claiming are our own have already kind of been represented in Brawl in some fashion or another. So, from that argument, this character's item tree was created just as a vehicle to hopefully express some of the more creative aspects of Brawl, particularly the items, which people tend to ignore just simply out of spite of the random factor of items. The character itself is as basic as can be. It's literally a tree. It's been presented here in a kind of fable, fairy tale maybe context of a happy little tree who has friends, but then his friends start being competitive, and the tree gets sad, and so on. But the moral of the story is random items. For just a vehicle to present random items through, there's actually quite a bit to the character itself and the moveset itself. Not least because I wanted this to be a moveset that would actually work well with items, but not by literally doing anything very intrusive with items. Not like taking a baseball bat and then swinging it with like a fire hitbox or something like that, or combining items. I didn't want this to be a character who used items in ways that other characters couldn't. I just wanted this to be a character whose moveset basically made it better for working with items. So like the item tree is the best character for using items, mainly because her playstyle is so conducive for it. So there's a lot here. She's a big, slow target. She obviously extremely heavy because she's a tree. She's also solid ground, so the foe can't actually run through her. I believe they can roll past her. I think that's the case. And so on. Just lots of these little character quirks, I suppose. The majority of them being described here are simply just to help express the fact that she's a tree. Because if you go straight into the attacks, without taking a couple of minutes to just repeatedly say she's a tree and she does kind of tree-like things. Unless you do that, you run the risk of attacks sounding like they couldn't be done by a tree. So it's just setting the reader's expectations, I guess. anyways, the idea is you got the all 4 directional specials are dropping items from her branches. There's up, down, left, and right B. Each item is completely random. It respawns itself every 10 seconds after you've dropped one. So literally it's completely random what you get and what you have to work with. That was deliberate right from the start. Well, a couple of minutes in, I suppose, from deciding to make this moveset, I asked myself whether or not these items should be randomized, or whether it should be based off a kind of points-based system, where she gets better items as she gets closer to losing. But I decided that no, it seemed to work a lot better for the message I was trying to bring across if they were completely random. That, and this is basically a kind of brawl balanced character, where she's balanced throughout all of the modes rather than just a competitive 1 versus 1 player. So in a free-for-all, the randomness of the items doesn't really have that much of an impact on the match, more than just how well the item tree does at protecting them or using them to lure the foe around, because it's a lot more chaotic and the items aren't guaranteed to be used on the item tree as they would be in a 1v1 situation. And in 1v1, the actual items themselves are a much bigger part and play a much bigger part in whether the item tree wins or loses. So yeah, there's that kind of balance. It's still never going to be really balanced because of the random factor. But it's about as balanced as I could possibly have made it, without going into extremely tedious details at any point in the set. The attacks are more of the obvious tree like effects. If you like a personified tree, like a humanoid, like a tree acting like a human. So she's like butting the foe with her head, which is really just the foliage on the top of her head. She's charging at the foe, using her roots as legs. There's just a lot of that, a lot of human-like attacks, but presented in the context that she's a fucking tree. All of these attacks are really based on the presumption that you are using the items as they come. I remember one of the more negative comments on this moveset was that the person simply decided that to assume that the items were always going to be the worst, because they were random. This person, I can't remember who, decided that it would be better to analyze the moveset from the viewpoint that she doesn't have items, so like in worst case scenario. And the conclusion there was that the moveset really kind of falls apart when you don't use items. You really need to have these items in play in order for the moveset to really function, which of course is good in the case of making items relevant here, but yeah, it does make it a little difficult for the moveset to be appreciated on its own merits, which I'm fairly convinced there are a few merits here. Mainly with the manipulation of the kind of dual hitbox she has, which is similar to a few sets from before, but one half of her is completely super armored, so the foliage on the top of her head is super armored, so that's also where the items are. So there's kind of this kind of risk reward situation where you could use your foliage to absorb all of the attacks while attacking yourself, but that puts you at the risk of losing the items on your in your foliage, which the foe is probably going to snap up and use against you straight away. So yeah, not too much functional going on inside the moveset itself. That's not really the point of it. We'll come back to the fart smash later. That's a whole other kettle of fish. But here, after this part of the moveset, comes the what could be considered the actual moveset, or the actual point of the moveset, which is to start listing the items and start analysing them from not just the item tree's perspective, but from the perspective of how you would use this item, anyways in Brawl, to kind of get under the psychology of why these items are here. I know the randomness obviously diminishes their usage and the strategy behind them somewhat, but being able to adapt to these items and to use them effectively, no matter what comes, that takes a lot more skill than people give these items credit for. I did actually go out and properly research all these items, playing with them, checking specific stats online and such. I think I even asked a couple of people I knew about items and what they felt their uses were. So none of this is really pulling anything out of my ass. There's things like the warp star. It's obvious when you're told about it, but in the heat of a match, if you're not used to an item, you might grab the warp star just by instinct, and then realize too late that the warp star is not actually all that good. It's a fixed period laggy attack which the foe can easily avoid simply by rolling at the right time. Of course, if you could trap the foe like in a pitfall, then the warp star will be a lot more useful. That's getting into combining items, which is a bit more difficult. Again, because of the random nature, you're not definitely going to get specific combinations of items even throughout an entire match. Things like the exploding crate, which people would assume is just a kind of dumb item that explodes if you hit it, which it is. It's an item which explodes when you hit it. But yeah, there's a psychology to having that on the stage. The fact that you can pick it up and move it about as well. That and the whole aspect of it exploding instantly if you hit it with a fire attack, which, as I point out, you can obviously combine with spicy curry, which is probably the only bad thing about spicy curry from the perspective of someone picking it up, is if an explosive appears out of nowhere and you end up running straight into it, then the spicy curry is going to detonate it. I think that'll also work with capsules that explode, barrels too. Although you would have to actually, for the barrels, you would have to stand, in front of it for quite a while for the damage to rack up high enough for the barrel to be destroyed. But anyways, the point is that if you've got curry, then explosives aren't really your friends. But yeah, that's all I could really think of as a downside for spicy curry, which is unfortunate because it's an interesting kind of concept for an item to have. It just seems to be along the lines of this item will always kind of buff you. That's the feeling I kind of got with how it works in Brawl. Personally, I would kind of reduce the rate of fire, so it's kind of like an aid to comboing the foe. Like maybe every other second a couple of spurts come out, or maybe after an attack. So you're not completely invulnerable from attack from the front, but you can still overwhelm the foe, take advantage of them, and rack up a fairly high combo on them. You're just using the even at this point reduced properties of the curry. Anyways, that was a nice long tangent on curry. So yeah, it just goes on like this for pretty much every single item in the game, including a small little interaction here with the green shell, which takes into consideration the fact that the item tree is a solid piece of ground. So if someone throws green shell at you, you're going to end up bouncing it right back in their face, which I thought was quite a nice little interaction there. Things I don't mention are things like the potential of a hothead to, because the item tree is solid ground, a hothead who's going around the platform then runs into you is going to, walk over you, which is obviously a very bad thing if it's the foe's hothead, but a pretty good one if it's yours. Especially, once it's on you, you could jump into the air so that, it's stuck on you, which could lead to a few potential, offensive options. Also things like a motion sensor bomb being able to be stuck to you. So it's essentially like a GUI bomb you can't pass on in that regard, though that might have been a bit less intentional. But still, it's possible because she's solid ground. For all intents and purposes, solid ground. You could throw a motion sensor bomb onto her and have it stick. I suppose you could also even throw a pitfall up and have it land on your head, so that you could then grab and then do an up throw, which lands them on your head, which is where the pitfall is, which pitfalls you. The pitfalls the opponent on your head. There's just a lot. There is a lot of potential in these items, and some of it is not even actually mentioned here. Things like that pitfall interaction that literally just came out of the top of my head as I was talking here. It's still logical things, and you would expect them to happen. So I suppose there's just the whole way that there's, as I was saying, there's just a lot of ways in which items can be used, and especially if they're combined with the more reasonable ideas from MYM, stuff like that. The item tree solidness, I suppose. And just combine the items with properties like that those open up a lot of potential ways to take advantage of the items. Just a bit of rambling there. Continues on. And after all of those items, this ends up now going into items which are from previous sets I've made, which, like before with my matchups, trying to keep track of all the movesets I've done in the past. I also like to keep track of all the items and extras I've made, which is kind of why when I do extras nowadays, I'm a bit more sporadic with them, mainly because I don't want to retread any old ground or make too many items for a specific game series, which is definitely the case with Pokemon, because Pokemon already have a good deal of representation in the game itself, and I've made quite a few extras anyways over the over the course of the movesets I've made for Pokemon. So nowadays, Pokemon movesets are usually the ones that don't have all too many extras on them. So yeah, just lots of items that I've made. A good few of them are actually just invented for this moveset. Things like the Familiar Orb, just an item to kind of bring the familiars in from the Alucard moveset. Just, in the same way that a Pokeball or an Assist Trophy would kind of summon their thing, the Familiar Orb summons a familiar. So it keeps on going. There's also this thing, the Transmigration Aura. I'll mention that this description is a bit of a lie. It says that it kills the foe, but really that's not supposed to be what's actually happening. It's supposed to, take them away from the battle. It looks like they've been killed, but they don't lose a stock. But they still end up as a random character, which is the ultimate punishment of it. They get healed up to, their optimum health of 0%, but they're now a random character, so it's usually going to be a lot worse than it was before. But if you're on the ropes, you're on your last stock and almost about to die, and there's this aura around, you could certainly use that. Transmigration Aura is not actually from any of the movesets that I've made prior to this one, nor is it related to any of the game series I've made a moveset for, before the item tree. This is linked more to a moveset that I make after this, which is Etna. Just an item from the Disgaea series. Well, it's not really an item from the Disgaea series. It's more of a concept. The idea in that game of transmigration is just resurrecting yourself, but you can change the character class of the unit you transmigrate into another unit. So yeah, that's just that item, just explaining in case anyone really doesn't know. And then yes, the end of the moveset is there. This is I do very much remember after finishing this moveset, going into the XAT chat and just kind of asking people kind of extra they want to kind of see in a new moveset. And obviously the first thing was Yoshi costume, and that really made me laugh, since no one really knew what moveset I was making, and it just the whole idea of a tree wearing a Yoshi costume, it was just hilarious to me. So yeah, I made that alternate costume, a few other costumes, stage, stickers, including Toyota Prius. I can't remember where that came from. It was certainly something from the chat. And even another item, even though this is the item tree, and I've made loads of items for this moveset already, along with explaining them for quite a while. I mean, reading all of this takes a lot longer than the actual moveset itself does. Just hammering home the fact that this is not really supposed to be a moveset in the sense of it being a moveset. It's still supposed to be a vehicle for presenting my argument that items do have a lot of potential in them, even if they're kind of hampered in a competitive way by the fact that they are completely random. And the return of Snake's Codex sequences. Just another one mocking the way Codex sequences end up just being vehicles to have a kind of conversation that leads up to some kind of joke at the end, even at the cost of none of the characters sounding, like they're supposed to. So in this case, Milling starts telling a joke, and then Snake ends the joke short because he's kind of fed up here. Milling calls him out on it, and then Snake just abruptly tells her to get back in the kitchen, and then that's basically the end of the conversation. And that's completely unrelated to the item tree. It's obviously not a codec that would appear in the game. It's just something to mock the idea of codec sequences, especially ones that don't really understand how these codecs are supposed to work anyways. After that, a few more extras. Subspace emissary role. Sorry about that. Just her appearance in the subspace emissary role is crowbarred into the cutscene, and she's supposed to be here, but she's in her green costume, which is actually a costume she doesn't have. She doesn't have a. Just let me scroll up. Yep, she does not have a single green costume other than the Yoshi. And if she was dressed as Yoshi, you would definitely see her in the background there. I should have probably just pasted the Brawl's official render art of Yoshi. I should have pasted him here. That might have generated a bit of a chuckle. But yeah, that's another extra kind of making fun of extras. It was going to be the kind of theme of these extras, except for, the fact that these two extras, the Fiend and the Assist Trophy, they take themselves a bit too seriously. I'm going to admit that that's because I literally took these characters, straight out of another OC that I was kind of making at the time, and decided simply to put them here, simply because... Well, yeah, because I felt they wouldn't really appear otherwise. At the time, the other OC was not really coming out too well. It was a case of the character I had designed not having a lot to work with in terms of a moveset. And the final extra, if you could possibly see it. I'm going to open this in a new tab just in case you can't. Oh, nope, that's not it. That's wrong. Yeah, it's view image. There we go. Nope, still can't. Still can't see it. But yeah, you probably can't see it, but it's the item tree with mega milk face and boobs. No idea really why I did. I suppose, yeah, the reason I did that was because this was literally the first OC, or one of the first characters overall that, even though it was claiming to be a female, just didn't look at all like a woman. Kind of jarring from the expectations that all Junahu movesets are. Yunahu movesets. Just women. But yeah, that's the tone that the moveset ends on. I suppose that'll be the tone that the nostalgic lookback ends on too. Except that's only half of it because of this final smash, which, if no one knows, actually has a link on it. So you see, he turns it into a hand. And you click on that, and that leads to this page on the stadium of, never decided how to pronounce it, 80, which a lot of you probably don't remember is kind of a MYM, a mass kind of group project of co-developing a moveset in an informal kind of way. I created like a social group on SWF, the Smashboards forums, and we just kind of talked. People just kind of talked there about the things AD should have as a moveset. I had a fair few votes on aspects of AD, and we were doing fairly well for ourselves, but we ended up aiming way too high for what we could possibly have achieved. We ended up with a mechanic with three different forms, and each form having a full moveset. And the moves in the moveset, since they were being developed individually by completely different people, they ended up being very well. They didn't fit together all too well. Is what I'm saying. But yeah, it was great. It was a great idea and a wonderful project to kind of work with. But ultimately, it failed quite drastically. Still, at the risk of sounding arrogant, this is kind of why I assumed would happen anyways. I didn't really expect AD to be worked on and actually completed. It was more of a means to kind of show MYM, the MYMers, that working together on a moveset is a lot harder than people would think. Mostly because it's not about making your contributions. It's also about considering the tastes of everyone else on the team, understanding what the overall goal is, planning towards that, and even removing ideas that you have which wouldn't work for the project, which is something a lot of the moves submitted for the moves for AD kind of failed to do. They all ended up being filled with ideas that didn't slot together well when the moveset kind of started coming together. But yeah, that's a brief background history on AD herself. The character is obviously just meant to be a kind of blank slate, literally just transforming into anything she wants. Originally, she was supposed to be just an actual blank slate character, and during the first week of MYM 7, which is when the project started, I basically said, this isn't really supposed to be the final design, this is just a representative graphic, and you guys are supposed to come to a decision on how she actually looks, because this is just because it's supposed to be everyone's moveset. They should be in control of everything in the moveset. But it seemed that either no one had a better idea, or no one really felt that it should have been changed. Mainly because the way I presented the idea was kind of so appealing to them. The fact that she could turn into anything meant that she could do anything. So it was as wide open a project as anyone could possibly hope for. Story-wise, I mean, linking this to the item tree was not too hard. I mean, they are actually the same creature supposedly. AD, as we continued making this moveset, we discussed for a fair while the kind of backstory of AD, and she was supposed to be this kind of creation of the highest gods that represented kind of the whole creative license on existence. She like has no form of her own, but is infinitely filled with curiosity and simply plays to whatever she sees. She's a craft. She is a basically the things she sees and experiences are what ends up defining her, and her personality and the things she wants to turn into. So she's presented as a very cutesy kind of avatar, but the things she turns into are actually representative of a very somber kind of things. She can turn, for instance, she can turn into a tank. Watching wars unfold and such, she started to learn to and enjoy this kind of misery. Watching pestilence, the kind of self-destructive nature of a society that has grown too big for itself. She started learning from that as well, giving rise to another form that she could take in the form of a buzzing swarm of insects. Then she saw the kind of she saw how the kind of nature of the universe itself was not really all that fair, and started learning from that too, with a form that represents a natural disaster. And there's various other things throughout the moveset that are meant to show that even though Aerie is this cute creature, she's got a limitless potential, and unfortunately for everyone concerned, because she was a blank slate, the things that she saw were all negative things, which affect the kind of mental state behind her actions. She's still a naive, innocent kind of being, so to speak, because she doesn't really have a personality of her own. She's just a blank slate, but she's constantly using these violent powers. Only violent because of the things she's seen. Just all throughout this moveset, pretty much everything here is about violence and various violent things, and I even think this one's stretching it a bit, but Pogo Party is meant to be kind of a tiny little snab at commercialization. Just kind of this branding a toy and then or branding an object and everyone wanting it, I suppose. As I said, it's just a tiny reference. It's not actually, doesn't actually go anywhere with this. More natural disasters here, more weapons there. Basically this very cutesy character that ends up being extremely violent because she is just a blank slate. And that represents the whole experience of making Aerie overall. She started off with literally no limits to what she could have ended up being, and as MYM has started pouring their own ideas in, they ended up pouring their own weaknesses, I suppose, as MYM is into it. And something that kind of struck me, even with my own contributions to the moveset, that there was kind of a lot of there was a bit of selfishness, I suppose, in the way suggestions were made. Moves were overly complicated in the sense that they had a lot of mechanics to them which were trying to dictate the way an entire moveset worked. I don't have any examples on this page, obviously, because this entire moveset was kind of rewritten just to, get AD finished in a form that people could digest, I suppose. But there were examples out there of moves that were trying to be the center of the moveset which hadn't been made yet. So yeah, there was kind of a lot of that. There was a fair amount of that kind of selfish. I'm not going to say it was outright selfish. I mean, I don't think anyone really intended to do that. This is more like unintentional error, weaknesses of the MYMers sneaking into AD. I really don't think, even if I could go back and kind of warn people about the ways that their contributions would end up kind of killing AD's chances, even if I could, go and warn them about that, I don't think the moveset would have ended up any differently, because the mistakes people were making were not conscious ones. They weren't, actively deciding to make AD complicated. They were just wanting to make it a good moveset. And a lot of times they didn't want to call anyone out on a concept that might not work, because that's just getting in the way of their expression of what they think the moveset should be. So yeah, a lot of bad things ended up being born out of this communal spirit. It's unfortunate, but I didn't really expect it to work out. I suppose I should apologize for that. It makes it sound like I've been stringing people along, making this moveset project just to see people squirm trying to make it, and that's not really my intent, really. I didn't expect it to, succeed, certainly, but I did want it to succeed. It would have been a very nice surprise to see people actually collaborate properly and get even just a moveset, even if it ended up being the worst moveset ever. If they just got a moveset out, then I would have been extremely proud of this of the whole project. Still, that's enough right there. I mean, that was a very long tangent. What was it? Yeah, I was trying to link this to the item tree. The item tree is a very similar concept of kind of being this naive expression of something that ends up in a kind of negative, ends up being negative because of the inherent problems with the things that she's trying to accomplish. In this case, the items, which, even though they are great, even though most items are great and they have a lot of potential, the random factor ends up making them difficult for any reader to really enjoy. And if it was as a moveset, it certainly wouldn't be something you could play competitively. So I suppose it's one of those movesets that you have have very limited appeal. So yeah, it's a very similar idea. This kind of naive character with a lot of potential that ends up kind of squandering it, not through any fault of its own, just by the inherent problems of the thing that she's trying to accomplish. But yeah, I figured that the item tree would be another form of AD. That this is kind of this is the naive core of AD, just a kind of a core stage kind of falls into when her more violent forms kind of become too much for her. But yeah, it does seem like it's crowbarred in a bit much, and to be honest, it is kind of. But I did from the start of making the character itself decide that it was going to be another form of 80, and the fact that I decided to make that link was what obviously spurred me on to actually make a moveset for 80, just to close off the whole chapter of this project that didn't quite work. This 80 moveset itself is probably the most overlooked by far. I've made that claim before, but this one is literally hidden inside of a moveset. So, it's hard to imagine anyone really coming here and actually reading through this and, trying to piece together that it has a play style, especially since right here it says that you only have 12 seconds as her. So even when you've got various traps and means to slam them into traps, state repositioning and such, even with all of that, the fact that you only have a limited time, that kind of hangs over the reader. So yeah, I don't think pretty much anyone really saw this moveset or appreciate, or if they did see it, I don't think anyone really appreciates it all that much. But yeah, that's the end of looking back on 80, and that's also the end of looking back on the item tree. Very kind of interesting original character to make. You'll probably notice that was the last original character I ever kind of made. Simply because there's quite a lot of work involved with making an original character, and the ever-growing kind of requirements to making a good moveset, they kind of make it difficult to make an original character in. You end up with a situation where if you make a good moveset with an original character, you could end up being accused of just making the character, to fit the play style that you decided on beforehand. Which I don't particularly want to do. I'd rather to have them hand in hand, original character made, simultaneously with the play style, so that they come out at the other end intrinsically linked together. That's not to say I'm not going to make an original character in the future. I'd really like to, and I am continually trying to do so. I've had in the past at least 7 or 8 different original character ideas that I've been working on in some form or another. They pretty much all fell flat, unfortunately. But that's kind of probably the story for another time, so I'll end it here. This was a rather meandering look back on the item tree. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for putting up with it. I am Yunahu, and I'll see you in the next nostalgic look back. Goodbye.